Hey there, Reddit. I never thought I'd be the type to share my personal drama online, but here I am, needing a place to vent and maybe get some advice. Buckle up, because this story is a wild ride involving my wife, her friends, a night out at a bar, and some unexpected revelations that turned my world upside down. Let me take you through the night I discovered just how much my life was about to change. So, this all started on an unusually quiet Thursday night. My wife, Jenna, was bustling around the house getting ready for a night out with her friends. They had planned to hit up this new bar downtown that had just opened. Honestly, I was delighted for her. Jenna had been stressed out with work lately, and I thought a night out would do her good. Plus, it gave me some much-needed alone time to catch up on my favorite shows. But here's the thing. Jenna had become somewhat distant lately. She would tell me she had urgent calls for work late at night, but I knew her boss, and he never called after hours. Something felt off. So, when she mentioned the girls' night out, I had a nagging suspicion in the back of my mind. I decided to go along with it for now, but I had my plan. As soon as Jenna and her friends left, I grabbed my phone and called up the husbands of her friends. We had a bit of a chat, and it turned out they were feeling just as uneasy as I was. So, we all decided to change into something less conspicuous and follow our wives to the bar. I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, the whole situation was bizarre. We arrived at the bar and made sure to keep a low profile, seating ourselves in a dark corner. The place was packed, with dim lights flashing to the beat of the music and people dancing everywhere. It was loud, chaotic, and perfect for getting lost in the crowd. We spotted our wives pretty quickly. They were hard to miss, laughing and drinking by the dance floor. Now, I never thought Jenna would be the type to attract other men, let alone flirt with them. But there she was, dancing provocatively with some guy I'd never seen before. I felt my blood boil as I watched. Her friends weren't any better. They were all over different guys, clearly enjoying the attention. But it was Jenna that really got to me. I watched in stunned silence as she grabbed one of the strangers, pulled him close, and kissed him passionately. They didn't stop there. She was practically devouring him right there on the dance floor, and before I knew it, they were heading towards the exit. That was my breaking point. I burst onto the dance floor, pushing through the sweaty bodies, and shouted, "One more step, bastards, and I'll kill you right here." My voice cut through the music like a knife, and the whole place seemed to pause for a moment. Jenna turned around, her eyes wide with shock and horror. The guy she was with looked equally stunned. I remember the good old days, when Jenna and I would walk in the park, enjoy life, and work together. We were happy, or so I thought. Now, here I was, facing the harsh reality of her betrayal. It felt like a punch to the gut. We didn't have kids, which was a small mercy, but it didn't lessen the pain. As we stood there on the dance floor, the tension was palpable. I could see the guilt in Jenna's eyes, but there was also a defiance there that scared me. It was like she was a completely different person. Her friends' husbands were equally stunned, realizing they were facing similar situations with their wives. The bouncers finally intervened, pulling us apart before things got too heated. I watched as Jenna and her friends were escorted out of the bar, still reeling from what had just happened. It was a moment that would change everything. So, here's what happened next after that explosive night at the bar. I went home feeling like my entire world had just shattered. My wife, Jenna, who I thought was just stressed out and needing a night out, was now a complete stranger to me. I couldn't shake the image of her passionately kissing that random guy, and it took everything in me not to lose it completely. The night didn't end there, though. The husbands of Jenna's friends were equally devastated, and we all decided to head back to my place to figure out what to do next. As we sat in my living room, the reality of the situation hit us hard. Our wives had been lying to us, and God knows for how long. We shared our suspicions and confirmed what we had all feared. This wasn't a one-time thing. We made a pact to confront them together the next morning. We wanted answers, and we wanted to see if there was any chance of salvaging our marriages. It was a long, sleepless night filled with anger, betrayal, and a lot of bitter conversations. Morning came too soon. Jenna walked in, looking exhausted and a bit disheveled. She froze when she saw us all sitting there, waiting for her. Her friends' husbands were there too, a united front demanding answers. Jenna's eyes darted around the room, and I could see the panic rising in her. "Jenna," I started, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. "We need to talk. All of us." She tried to play it cool, but I could see right through her facade. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Last night," I said, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "We followed you to the bar. We saw everything." Her face went pale and she stumbled back, sinking into the nearest chair. Her friends' husbands chimed in, demanding to know how long this had been going on and why they had been deceiving us. Jenna took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "It's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "Not what we think? We saw you, Jenna, kissing that guy, acting like we didn't exist." She broke down then, sobbing uncontrollably. Her friends' husbands were having similar conversations, and the room was filled with the sounds of betrayal and heartbreak. Jenna eventually confessed that it had started a few months ago. What began as harmless fun, dancing, and flirting had escalated into something much more serious. She admitted to meeting up with that guy, his name was Rick, several times. She insisted it was just a fling, something to escape the pressures of everyday life. Her words felt like knives. "And what about us?" I asked, my voice barely holding back the rage. "What about our life together? Were we not enough for you?" Jenna just kept crying, unable to give me a straight answer. Her friends were equally remorseful, but it didn't lessen the blow. The husbands and I were at a loss, torn between wanting to salvage what we had and knowing that trust had been irrevocably shattered. As the conversations wound down, we agreed to take some time apart to process everything. Jenna packed a bag and left to stay with a friend. The other wives did the same. The silence in the house was deafening after they left. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to wrap my head around what had happened. The anger and hurt were overwhelming, but underneath it all was a sense of loss. The woman I had married, the life we had built together, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. So, here's how things unfolded after that painful confrontation. Jenna and her friends had packed their bags and left, and the house was eerily quiet. I spent the next few days trying to make sense of everything. The initial shock was wearing off, but the hurt and anger were still there, simmering just below the surface. During this time, I decided to take a step back and think about what I wanted. I had always believed in second chances, but this betrayal was on another level. I needed to know if there was any hope left for us, or if it was time to let go and move on. I took a walk to clear my head, ending up at the park where Jenna and I used to spend so much time together. It was bittersweet, remembering the good times we had. But those memories were now tainted by her actions. As I sat on a bench, my phone buzzed. It was a message from one of the other husbands, Mike. He suggested we meet up and talk about what to do next. It seemed like a good idea. Maybe we could find some clarity together. That evening, Mike and the other husbands came over. We sat around my living room, sharing our thoughts and feelings. It was therapeutic, knowing I wasn't alone in this mess. We decided that we needed to confront our wives again, but this time with a clear plan. We needed to know if they were genuinely remorseful or if this was just another phase they would eventually slip back into. A few days later, we arranged to meet our wives at a neutral location, a small cafe downtown. It was a tense and awkward reunion. Jenna and her friends looked nervous, and rightfully so. We all took our seats, the air thick with unspoken words. Mike was the first to speak. "We need to know why," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Why did you feel the need to seek out these other men? What were we not giving you that you had to find elsewhere?" Jenna looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "It wasn't about you," she said softly. "It was about me. I felt trapped, suffocated by the routine. I needed an escape, something exciting to remind me that I'm still alive." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "And you thought cheating was the answer?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you have any idea what this has done to us?" Jenna broke down, sobbing into her hands. Her friends were similarly distraught, each giving their own version of the same story. They felt lost, needed excitement, and had made terrible choices in the process. But they all insisted that they still loved us and wanted to make things right. We listened, absorbing their confessions, but it wasn't enough. "Love isn't just about feeling good," I said, my anger bubbling to the surface. "It's about trust, respect, and commitment. How can we ever trust you again?" Jenna looked at me, desperation in her eyes. "I know I messed up, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to try. I want to make things right. Please, give me a chance." The other husbands and I exchanged glances. This was the moment of truth. We had to decide whether to give our marriages another shot or to walk away for good. It wasn't an easy decision, and there were no guarantees that things would ever be the same. "We need time," Mike finally said, speaking for all of us. "Time to heal. Time to see if you're really willing to put in the effort to make this work. We're not making any promises, but we'll try." Jenna nodded, her face a mix of relief and sorrow. We left the cafe with heavy hearts, knowing that the road ahead would be long and difficult. But at least we had a direction, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken. After we agreed to give our marriages another shot, things were complicated, to say the least. Jenna moved back in, but it wasn't like flipping a switch. We had a long way to go, and trust was the biggest hurdle. The first few days were awkward. We tiptoed around each other, trying to avoid triggering another argument. But avoiding the issue wasn't going to help, so we decided to start with counseling. Jenna was eager to show she was committed to making things right, and honestly, I needed some guidance on how to even begin forgiving her. Our counselor, Dr. Patel, was great. She helped us open up about our feelings in a way that felt safe and constructive. I learned that Jenna's dissatisfaction wasn't just about our relationship, but also about her feeling unfulfilled in other areas of her life. She felt stuck in a rut and made some terrible decisions trying to escape it. I could understand feeling stuck. Who hasn't been there? But it didn't make the betrayal any less painful. One of the hardest parts was hearing Jenna talk about Rick, the guy from the bar. She admitted that their fling had given her a sense of excitement she hadn't felt in a long time. Hearing that was like pouring salt on a wound, but it was necessary for us to lay everything bare if we were going to move forward. We established some ground rules: open communication, transparency about our whereabouts, and most importantly, no contact with the people they had cheated with. Jenna deleted Rick's number in front of me, blocked him on all social media, and promised to avoid places where she might run into him. The other husbands and I continued to support each other. We had formed a sort of brotherhood through our shared pain. We met up regularly to talk about our progress, our setbacks, and to just vent. It helped knowing that I wasn't alone in this struggle. At home, Jenna and I started to rebuild our relationship one day at a time. We set aside time every evening to talk, really talk, about our day, our feelings, and our hopes for the future. Some nights were harder than others, with old wounds reopening, but we pushed through. Slowly, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. We also started doing more things together to rekindle our bond. Simple activities like cooking dinner, going for walks, and even watching movies. These moments helped us reconnect, but there was always that shadow of doubt lingering in the background. One evening, as we were walking in the park, Jenna stopped and turned to me, her eyes full of tears. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, her voice trembling. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for this second chance. I promise I'll spend every day trying to be the wife you deserve." Her words touched me, but the wound was still fresh. "I'm trying, Jenna," I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. "But it's going to take time. We need to rebuild everything from the ground up." She nodded, understanding. "I'm here for it. For us." The days turned into weeks, and while things weren't perfect, they were getting better. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, but brick by brick, we were laying the foundation for a new beginning. I still had moments of doubt and anger, but I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Things had been moving slowly, but Jenna and I were making some progress. Trust was still a big issue, but our daily conversations and counseling sessions were helping, or so I thought. One night, I was going through some old photos, reminiscing about happier times. Jenna saw me and sat down next to me. We started flipping through the pictures together, laughing at the silly moments we had captured over the years. For a moment, it felt like we were getting back to our old selves. Then, out of nowhere, Jenna said, "There's something I need to tell you." My heart sank. We had already laid everything bare, or at least I thought we had. "What is it?" I asked, bracing myself for whatever was coming next. She took a deep breath. "There's more to the story with Rick. It wasn't just a fling at the bar. We met up a few times after that." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "You said it was just a one-time thing," I replied, my voice barely holding back the anger. "I know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was scared to tell you the whole truth because I didn't want to lose you, but I can't keep lying. We met up a few more times, but I ended it. I realized I was destroying everything we had." It was like the ground had been ripped out from under me again. Just when I thought we were making progress, this bombshell dropped. "How am I supposed to believe anything you say now?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "I understand if you can't," she replied, sobbing. "But I'm trying to be honest now. I want us to have a real chance at rebuilding our marriage, and I know that means I need to come clean about everything." I got up and walked out of the room. I needed to clear my head, to think. I ended up at Mike's house. I told him what Jenna had just confessed, and he looked as stunned as I felt. "Man, I don't even know what to say," he admitted. "This whole thing just keeps getting messier." We sat in silence for a while, just processing everything. Finally, Mike said, "You need to decide if you can still trust her, if you can still see a future together after all this. No one can make that decision for you." I nodded, knowing he was right, but it didn't make the decision any easier. I spent the night at Mike's, tossing and turning, trying to figure out what to do next. By morning, I knew I had to confront Jenna again and see if there was any hope left. When I got home, Jenna was sitting on the couch, looking like she hadn't slept at all. "We need to talk," I said, sitting down across from her. "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I need to know why," I said, my voice cracking. "Why did you keep lying to me? After everything, why didn't you just tell me the whole truth?" "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared that you'd leave me, that I'd lose everything. But I see now that lying only made things worse. I'm so sorry, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, but also the pain and regret. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again," I said honestly, "but I'm willing to try for now. We need to rebuild everything from scratch." Jenna nodded, tears of relief and sorrow in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "I promise I'll work every day to earn back your trust." It was a tentative step forward, but it was something. I knew it would take time, and there would be more challenges ahead. But for now, we were still trying. And maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for us. Few weeks since Jenna's latest confession, and I wish I could say things were getting easier, but that would be a lie. Rebuilding trust is a slow and painful process, and there have been more than a few bumps along the road. Our counseling sessions continued, and they were both a blessing and a curse. Dr. Patel helped us navigate our feelings and provided us with tools to communicate better, but each session also forced us to confront the raw pain of Jenna's betrayal. It was emotionally exhausting, but necessary. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Jenna and I decided to take a walk to clear our heads. As we strolled through the park, she reached for my hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. We walked in silence for a while, just holding hands and trying to enjoy the moment. "I know it's hard," she finally said, breaking the silence. "I can't imagine how much I've hurt you, but I'm committed to making things right, even if it takes the rest of my life." I squeezed her hand, appreciating her words, but still feeling the weight of doubt. "I'm trying, Jenna," I replied, "but it's going to take time. Some days it feels like we're making progress, and other days it feels like we're right back where we started." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. Just know that I'm here, and I'm not giving up on us." As we walked back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was looming. Jenna's latest confession had reopened old wounds, and I was struggling to keep my emotions in check. I decided to talk to Mike and the other husbands again. Maybe they had some advice or at least could offer some support. We met up at our usual spot, a small cafe where we could talk without being interrupted. Mike, Tom, and Dave were already there when I arrived, and they greeted me with sympathetic looks. "Rough week?" Tom asked as I sat down. "You have no idea," I sighed, recounting Jenna's latest confession and the subsequent fallout. They listened intently, nodding and understanding. Each of them had their own struggles, and it helped to know I wasn't alone. "I think it's important to remember that rebuilding trust isn't a linear process," Mike said. "There will be setbacks. What matters is how you both handle them." "Yeah," Dave added. "Communication is key. If you're feeling overwhelmed, let her know. Don't bottle it up." Their advice was sound, but it didn't make the pain any less real. Still, it was comforting to have friends who understood what I was going through. Back at home, Jenna and I continued to navigate our new normal. We set up a routine of daily check-ins where we would talk about our feelings and any concerns we had. It was awkward at first, but slowly, it started to help. The transparency was reassuring, even if the conversations were difficult. One evening, as we were preparing dinner together, Jenna suddenly looked up at me, her eyes filled with guilt. "There's something else I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling. My heart sank. Not again, I thought. "What is it?" I asked, bracing myself for more bad news. "Remember that business trip I took last year?" she began. "I wasn't just meeting with clients. Rick was there too. It wasn't planned, but we ended up spending a lot of time together. I didn't want to tell you because I knew how much it would hurt you, but I can't keep lying. You deserve to know the whole truth." I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. "So you've been lying to me for even longer than I thought?" I asked, my voice rising. Jenna nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I was weak and selfish, and I hate myself for what I've done. But I want to be honest with you now, no matter how much it hurts." I took a deep breath, trying to process this new information. "I appreciate your honesty," I said slowly, "but it feels like every time I start to trust you again, another bomb drops. How am I supposed to move forward if I keep getting hit with more lies?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice breaking, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I love you, and I don't want to lose you." We stood there in the kitchen, both of us crying, feeling the weight of her betrayal and the uncertainty of our future. It was another setback, another test of our resolve. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if we could ever truly move past this. Trust was fragile, and each new revelation felt like another crack in an already shattered foundation. But despite everything, there was a part of me that still loved Jenna, that still wanted to believe we could find our way back to each other. After Jenna's latest confession, I felt like we were back at square one. But despite the setbacks, there were moments that gave me a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could come out of this stronger. Our counseling sessions with Dr. Patel continued to be a lifeline. She encouraged us to focus not just on the past, but on rebuilding a future together. One of the exercises she suggested was to start planning small, positive activities that could help us reconnect. It sounded simple, but in the midst of all the chaos, it was a challenge. Jenna suggested we take a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. It was a place we had visited early in our relationship, a place filled with happy memories. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of spending an entire weekend alone with her without the distractions of daily life was daunting. But I agreed, hoping it might help us find some clarity. We packed our bags and set off early Saturday morning. The drive was quiet, but not uncomfortable. It felt like we were both mentally preparing for what lay ahead. As we wound our way through the scenic roads, the tension began to ease a little. The mountains had a calming effect, and I started to remember why I had fallen in love with Jenna in the first place. When we arrived at the cabin, it was like stepping back in time. Everything looked exactly as I remembered. The cozy interior, the view of the lake, the smell of pine. It was all so familiar. We unpacked and settled in, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a small sense of peace. That evening, we decided to cook dinner together. It was a simple meal, but the act of working side by side in the kitchen brought back memories of happier times. We laughed over silly things, like who was better at chopping vegetables, and it felt good to share those moments. After dinner, we sat by the fireplace, sipping wine and talking. Really talking. Jenna opened up about her feelings of inadequacy and how she had felt trapped in her own life. It was hard to hear, but it also made me realize that I hadn't been as attentive as I should have been. We both had our faults, and recognizing that was a step towards healing. "I'm not saying what I did was right," Jenna said, her voice soft and sincere. "But I want you to know that I'm committed to making things better. I want us to work, to rebuild what we lost." I looked at her, seeing the genuine remorse in her eyes. "I want that too," I replied, feeling a mix of hope and fear. "But it's going to take time. We need to rebuild trust, and that's not going to happen overnight." "I understand," she said, reaching out to hold my hand. "I'm here for the long haul, whatever it takes." The rest of the weekend was spent reconnecting. We took long walks by the lake, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. We played board games, cooked meals together, and even managed to share a few moments of genuine laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. When we returned home, things weren't magically fixed, but there was a noticeable change. We were more open with each other, more willing to communicate honestly. The trip had given us a glimpse of what could be if we both put in the effort. But life isn't a fairy tale, and we knew there would be more challenges ahead. Trust is fragile, and rebuilding it takes consistent effort. There were still moments of doubt, still nights when I lay awake wondering if we could ever fully heal. But there was also a renewed sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. As we continued our journey, both individually and together, I realized that forgiveness isn't a one-time thing. It's a process, a choice you make every day. And while it was still painful to think about the past, I began to focus more on the present and the future we were trying to create. One day at a time, one step at a time, we were working towards rebuilding our life together. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always pretty, but it was real, and for now, that was enough. So after that somewhat hopeful weekend trip, Jenna and I were trying to keep the momentum going. Our daily check-ins and counseling sessions were helping, but trust is a tricky thing. Just when you think you're making progress, something unexpected can knock you off balance. One evening, Jenna and I decided to go out for dinner. It was our first real date night since everything had happened, and we wanted to do something to remind ourselves of the good times. We chose a cozy little restaurant downtown, one of our old favorites. It felt like a step in the right direction, a way to reclaim some normalcy. Dinner was going well. We talked about lighthearted things, avoiding the heavier topics for once. It almost felt like we were dating again, rediscovering each other in a new light. But then, as we were finishing up our meal, I saw a familiar face walk in, Rick. He hadn't noticed us yet, but just seeing him there sent a chill down my spine. Jenna saw him too. Her face went pale, and I could see the panic in her eyes. "What do we do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "We finish our dinner and leave," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We don't let him ruin this." But it was too late. Rick spotted us and started making his way over to our table. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the anger rising. Jenna gripped my hand under the table, her eyes pleading with me to stay calm. "Hey," Rick said as he approached. "Fancy seeing you here." His tone was casual, but there was an undercurrent of smugness that made my blood boil. "Rick," I said coolly, "we're just finishing up. What do you want?" He shrugged, clearly enjoying the tension. "Just thought I'd say hi. No hard feelings, right?" I stood up, my fists clenched at my sides. "Actually, there are plenty of hard feelings, so why don't you do us all a favor and leave us alone?" Jenna stood up too, her voice firm but calm. "Rick, please, just go." He looked at her, then back at me, and smirked. All right, I can take a hint. Enjoy your evening." With that, he walked away, leaving us both shaken. We left the restaurant soon after, the mood completely ruined. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. The encounter with Rick had brought all the pain and betrayal back to the surface. It felt like we were right back at square one. Once we got home, Jenna broke down. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." I held her, feeling my own anger and hurt mixing with a sense of helplessness. "I know, Jenna, but seeing him tonight, it just brought everything back." We sat on the couch, holding each other, trying to find some comfort in the midst of the chaos. "We can't let him control our lives," I said softly. "We have to move past this, for our own sake." Jenna nodded, wiping away her tears. "You're right. I hate that he still has this power over us, but we have to find a way to take it back." The next few days were tough. The encounter with Rick had reopened old wounds, but it also made us more determined to move forward. We talked about setting stronger boundaries and finding ways to protect ourselves from future encounters. Jenna suggested we start going to a different gym, a place where we wouldn't run into Rick or anyone else from our past. It was a good idea, and we found a new place that we both liked. It was a small change, but it made a big difference. We also decided to plan more activities together, things that would help us reconnect and rebuild our bond. We started taking cooking classes, something we had always talked about but never got around to. It was fun, and it gave us something positive to focus on. Through it all, there were still moments of doubt and pain. Trust is fragile, and rebuilding it takes time. But we were committed to making it work, and that gave us hope. One evening, after a particularly good day, Jenna looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and love. "Thank you," she said softly, "for giving us a chance, for believing that we can get through this." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you for fighting for us. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer." As we continued our journey, I realized that healing isn't a straight path. It's messy and complicated, filled with setbacks and unexpected encounters. But as long as we were both willing to put in the effort, there was hope. And sometimes, that's enough. I'm back with another update. After the unexpected encounter with Rick, things were tense, but Jenna and I were more determined than ever to make our relationship work. We had more ups and downs, but something happened recently that felt like a real turning point. It started with an invitation. Jenna's company was hosting a formal gala, and all employees were encouraged to bring their spouses. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of being around Jenna's colleagues, many of whom probably knew about her affair, was daunting. But Jenna insisted it would be good for us, a chance to show that we were moving forward together. The night of the gala, we dressed up in our finest attire. Jenna looked stunning in her elegant dress, and for a moment, it felt like we were back in the early days of our relationship. We arrived at the venue, a grand hotel ballroom, and were greeted with smiles and handshakes. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to see us, which put me a bit more at ease. As the night went on, we mingled with Jenna's colleagues, danced, and enjoyed the lavish dinner. It felt like we were turning a corner, putting the past behind us. But then, just as things were going well, we ran into someone I hadn't expected, Jenna's former boss, Mark. Mark was an older man, well respected in the company, and he had always been kind to both of us. But seeing him brought back memories of the lies Jenna had told about late-night work calls. I felt a wave of anger and resentment, but I tried to keep it in check. "Mark," Jenna greeted him warmly. "It's good to see you." "You too, Jenna," he replied, then turned to me. "How are you, John?" "I'm doing all right," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just enjoying the evening." Mark nodded, then gave Jenna a knowing look. "You two have been through a lot. It's good to see you here together." There was an awkward silence, and I could tell Jenna was uncomfortable. "Yes, we're working through it," she said, her voice tight. Mark seemed to sense the tension and quickly changed the subject, asking about our plans for the holidays. We chatted for a few more minutes before he excused himself to talk to someone else. As soon as he walked away, I could see the relief on Jenna's face. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. "Yeah," I said, taking a deep breath. "It's just, seeing him reminded me of everything, but I'm trying to move past it." Jenna squeezed my hand. "I know it's hard, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Later that evening, as we were leaving the gala, Jenna suggested we take a walk through the hotel gardens. It was a beautiful night, and the gardens were lit up with fairy lights, creating a magical atmosphere. We walked in silence for a while, just enjoying each other's presence. "Thank you for coming tonight," Jenna said softly. "I know it wasn't easy for you." "I'm glad I came," I replied. It felt good to be out together, to show everyone that we're still standing. Jenna smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "I wish I could take back everything I did. But all I can do now is try to be better, for us." We stopped by a small fountain, and I turned to face her. "We've come a long way, Jenna, and we still have a long way to go, but I'm starting to believe that we can do this." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were tears of hope. "I believe it too," she whispered. We stood there, holding each other, letting the peace of the moment wash over us. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. We were no longer just surviving. We were starting to rebuild. The next few weeks were some of the best we'd had in a long time. We continued with our counseling, kept up with our new routines, and planned more date nights. We even started talking about taking a vacation, something to look forward to and work towards. One evening, as we were making dinner, Jenna looked at me with a serious expression. "I've been thinking," she said, "about us, about everything that's happened. I want us to renew our vows." Her words took me by surprise. Renew our vows? I repeated, trying to process the idea. Yes, she said, her eyes shining with determination. I want to recommit to you, to us. I want to make new promises and show you that I'm all in. I felt a lump in my throat. The idea was both terrifying and beautiful. Jenna, I don't know what to say. Just say yes, she whispered, taking my hands in hers. Let's start fresh together. I looked into her eyes, seeing the love and sincerity there, and felt a glimmer of hope. Yes, I said, my voice filled with emotion. Let's do it. Planning the vow renewal became a new focus for us, something positive to work towards. It felt like a new chapter, a chance to leave the past behind and build something stronger. We chose a small, intimate ceremony with just close friends and family, the people who had supported us through the toughest times. The day of the ceremony, standing in front of Jenna, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. As we exchanged our vows, promising to love and cherish each other anew, I knew we were taking a big step towards healing. It wouldn't be easy, and there would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time, I truly believed we could make it. But I'm back with what I hope will be the final chapter of this story. Renewing our vows felt like a fresh start, a chance to leave the past behind and focus on our future together. But as with anything, life has a way of testing your resolve just when you think you're in the clear. The vow renewal ceremony was beautiful. We held it in a small garden, surrounded by our closest friends and family. As we stood there, exchanging vows under a canopy of flowers, I felt a sense of peace and hope. Jenna looked radiant, her eyes filled with love and determination. For the first time in a long time, I believed we could make it. After the ceremony, we threw a small reception at a nearby inn. There was laughter, music, and genuine joy. Our friends and family shared stories and toasts, celebrating our commitment to each other. It felt like a weight had been lifted, and I was finally able to breathe. The weeks following the ceremony were some of the best we'd had in years. Jenna and I were more connected than ever, and our communication had improved significantly. We continued with our counseling sessions, and Dr. Patel was thrilled with our progress. She reminded us that while we had come a long way, it was important to keep working on our relationship. One evening, Jenna and I were sitting on the porch, enjoying the sunset. We talked about our future, our hopes, and our dreams. It was during this conversation that Jenna brought up an idea that took me by surprise. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft. "I want us to start fresh in every way. Maybe it's time for a change of scenery." "What do you mean?" I asked, curious. "I mean, maybe we should think about moving," she replied. "A new place, a new beginning. Somewhere we can build new memories without the shadows of the past hanging over us." The idea was intriguing. We had both lived in the same town for years, and while it was home, it was also filled with memories, both good and bad. A fresh start in a new place could be exactly what we needed. "Where would we go?" I asked, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think it's worth exploring. We could find a place that feels right for us, where we can start over together." We spent the next few weeks researching different places, visiting towns and cities, looking for somewhere that felt like a fresh start. It was an adventure, and it brought us even closer together. Eventually, we found a small town that felt perfect. It had a sense of community, beautiful scenery, and it was far enough from our old life to truly feel like a new beginning. Moving was a big decision, and it wasn't without its challenges. We had to sell our house, find new jobs, and say goodbye to friends and family. But as we settled into our new home, I felt a sense of peace and optimism I hadn't felt in years. This was our chance to build something new, something better. Our new life wasn't without its struggles, but we faced them together. We made a point to keep communication open, to be honest with each other about our feelings and needs. We continued with counseling, now via video calls with Dr. Patel, and it helped us stay on track. One day, as we were unpacking boxes in our new home, Jenna found an old photo album. We sat down and flipped through it, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. It was a poignant reminder of how far we had come and how much we had overcome together. "We've been through a lot," Jenna said, her voice filled with emotion. "But I'm so grateful for where we are now." "Me too," I replied, feeling a deep sense of love and gratitude. "We've built something strong, and I'm excited for our future." As we continued to build our new life together, I realized that healing is a continuous journey. It takes effort, patience, and a lot of love. But with Jenna by my side, I felt ready to face whatever challenges came our way. So, here we are, starting fresh in a new town, with a renewed commitment to each other. It's not a perfect fairy tale, but it's real, and it's ours. And for that, I am truly grateful. Thanks for following along on this journey, Reddit. Your support and advice have meant the world to me. Here's to new beginnings and the hope that love, trust, and forgiveness can overcome even the toughest of times.